We've convinced ourselves the world is one way. And if something gets introduced to us that doesn't fit that pattern, boom, our brains don't know how to react to it. This is going to be day 23's video. We've talked about discerning your purpose. I want to look at discovering divine connections pretty early this morning, so my inflection is probably going to be maybe pretty monotone. So discovering divine connections, I didn't really know how much information I was going to have. And all this stuff started to kind of come together. Started with this idea here. I had this fearing of things that I didn't agree with. If I didn't agree with them, I didn't want to explore those things. I don't know if it was confirmation bias, probably. There's a card in my Zettelkasten somewhere that I don't have indexed very well because I can't find it. And so when I do run across it, I'll be sure to index it. The Zettelkasten is a tool for discovering, developing, and articulating your worldview, and then comparing and contrasting with what you currently believe, and then potentially changing your understandings. I guess the idea is growth, right? But then so the freedom to explore without this emotional baggage, maybe confirmation bias. I'll grab that card quick because that's relevant here. There it is, confirmation bias. 2100 C1. Actually, let me look through all the cognitive biases that I have written. Yeah, I like that one actually. That's a good one too. Cause and effect biases. Now this card here is a, what do we call these? But essentially it's a card where you can put anywhere you want to, and it's to organize kind of an outline or maybe some related cards. Yeah, I like this quote by Christopher Hitchens. Don't take refuge in the false security of consensus and the feeling that whatever you think, you're bound to be okay because you're in the safely moral majority. Effective heuristic. Making decisions based on emotion rather than objective evidence. That's definitely related. Bandwagon effect, that taking beliefs, ideas, fads, trends because they have been adopted by others. That goes right along with the Christopher Hitchens quote there. Confirmation bias, tendency to search for and interpret, favor and recall information in a way that confirms. Yep. Status quo bias, reference to keep things in their current state. We do what we know. I gotta write this out here actually. I don't remember where I heard this or if I came up with it. I have no idea. We do what we know, and we know what we do. Traditions of men. Which I'll actually look up. Traditions of men. Traditions of men, here we go. It's hard to hear God's voice when you've already decided what you want Him to say. This was sent to me by a brother of mine. It's very good stuff. Oh, I already got this. I actually connect these two cards. Yeah, and then I've got, see also groupthink, embrace change. I'm going to look that up. What do I want to look up? 1640. To improve is to change. So to be perfect is to have change often, Winston Churchill. But you can see just how, one thought leads to many, many thoughts. Let me continue on. So fearing things I didn't agree with, and then I started talking about confirmation bias, if I'm not mistaken. Why do I agree with it? Why do I disagree with it? And that whole idea of the Zettelkasten being a tool to discover, develop, and articulate a worldview, find things that are contradictory to that, talk about traditions of men in some way, shape, or form, and hear my stomach growling. I'm going to get my smoothie. It's hard to hear God's voice when you've already decided what you wanted to say. And change, we'll just put that over there. Traditions of men. It goes there. False serenity bias. And kind of goes there. Confirmation bias for sure. Feelings. And, that kind of goes along with the fear. Effective heuristics. Emotions. So these came after the fact. But as I was thinking about discovering divine connections, I, again, was writing down, fearing things I didn't agree with. Why do I agree with this? Why do I disagree? The Zettelkasten allows me the freedom to explore without the emotional baggage, and then determine, I can read this stuff and I can be cool with it, and I can determine, why do I agree? Why do I disagree? As I was looking for that other card, Jordan Peterson, read and write every day, make it a habit to learn to articulate your beliefs, find your beliefs, test them, read what articulate people write about, develop goals, strategies, and plan, negotiate from strength, inspire others with an articulate vision for the future. That's pretty awesome. So the feedback, let's see, I'm going to start, like I said, from the back. So divergent thinking, that has to do with more of confirmation bias and free-flowing non-linear discovery of ideas, usually starting from one point and branching off into many different ideas, some related, some unrelated to the original starting point. Idea generation, open-ended exploration, non-linear thinking, cognitive problem-solving, risk-taking, and tolerance for ambiguity. Giving yourself the freedom to diverge. The internet allows me to start something I'm interested in, obsessed with, in fact, and then hot swap to another thing. I can always come back to it. So this is key. Like right now, I have multiple source cards. Like I'm reading a book on influence. Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. This is Robert Cialdini. I'm also looking at Riandaris, The Productivity Killer, Worse Than Procrastination. I've started that one. I've got some source notes on those. I'm also doing a little bit more with the John Lennox stuff, with his interview with Jordan Peterson. Then what I did is I actually started creating a list of books that I wanted to read. I decided, instead of just creating the list, I'm going to actually create the beginnings of source cards. So I want to read Thinking Fast and Slow, and then Matthew Frey, This Is How Your Marriage Ends. I've actually already been listening to this book on audio, and it's awesome. And if you want to keep your marriage going, this is a great book. And then John Mark Comer, Practicing the Way, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, Do as He Did. The early Christians, and people said that they were just followers of the way. And so this book is of interest to me. I have no idea who the author is, but this is something I want to check out. And then David Burkott or Berceau, Will the Real Heretics Please Stand Up? This was one of the early books that I read. I actually have it over here. This is one of the early books, Will the Real Heretics Please Stand Up? A new look at today's evangelical church in the light of early Christianity. It has helped me so much in my Christianity, not just relying on the traditions of men. Go back to the source, the early church fathers, and that's a lot what David Berceau does. He's got another book called will the theologians please sit down? As kind of a follow-up to this, and it's awesome. This guy here, I very much disagree with a lot of what this guy talks about, but he's got a book out there, Preaching Reimagined, which I found when I read it the first time very interesting, and I want to find out. I think I recall this book really resonating with me. It was about having a conversation versus preaching at people. John Mark Comer again, the ruthless elimination of hurry, how to stay emotionally healthy and spiritually alive in the chaos of the modern world. And then Lisa Cron, Story Genius. I've read this 2 or 3 times now, but I've never put it in my Zettelkasten, so that is a plan. So yeah, anyway, that's what I do now, is I will create the beginnings of source cards for books that I want to read. That's for free. Again, so getting back to, okay, giving yourself freedom to diverge. Associative chaining. Ideas, images, thoughts are linked together through association. One thought leads to another, which leads to another, and so on. Recalling one memory can trigger a cascade of related memories. Learning new material makes your brain fit the new material into its most closely related known info, emotions, etc. Not all cognitive processes are linked linearly. This is how our brain works. This is how the Zettelkasten works. That's why the Zettelkasten works so well, is because this is how our brain works. The idea that a human brain is primarily a predictive machine rather than a reactive one. We don't just respond to stimuli, we predict outcomes based on patterns stored in our memory. The brain recognizes patterns and compares them to stored memories, and thus predicts future events. This is often, I believe, why we fear things we don't agree with. In our worldview, we've convinced ourselves the world is one way. And if something gets introduced to us that doesn't fit that pattern, boom, our brains don't know how to react to it. And unless we can slow down and think it through, then that pops up. But it's something that I'm going to dig more into. Learning and prediction. Learning occurs most significantly when predictions fail. There is a mismatch between expectations and sensory information. Failed expectation propagates up the hierarchy, forcing the higher levels to adjustment and refinement. And I think this causes dissonance, cognitive dissonance. Let me actually look that up. I have a card on that. Cognitive psychology, cognitive biases, cognitive dissonance. 21, C1, C2. Holding contradictory beliefs, values, and attitudes simultaneously, causing discomfort, stress, mentally. Example 1, cognition 1, smoking is harmful. Cognition 2, continue to smoke. They're in contradiction, but you're doing the same thing. To reduce stress, quit smoking, or downplay the danger. So yeah, that is the result. You try to reduce the stress in one way or another. And fear, if something doesn't match your worldview, you fear it. So you either push it away, I guess it's fight or flight. But framework of continuous learning, we start off with reflection, and then we get into theory, and then we finally get to action. And what this gentleman, this video, was saying is skip theory at first and take action. Go straight to action. And if you go straight to action, because most people get trapped in the theory phase. So go to action, and then doing is more important than theorizing about something. Real experience allows you to understand theory more. So then you got action, you've got some things to reflect on, then you can start to think about the theory more. and then more action, more reflection, and then more theory, more action. And this is actually pretty cool. And then here, this comes from On Intelligence. The reality, you have experiences, you have thoughts about those experiences, perceived reality, you have expectations, and then you have outcomes. And because of your thoughts, there's pattern recognition, and you have predictions about that pattern recognition. So you got expectations, and then you judge that by the outcome. Your pattern recognition is driven by your memory, which can also be driven by your worldview. Boom, boom, because our memories are very flawed. So our worldview plays a huge key on what we remember and don't remember, or choose to let go. And so pattern recognition, prediction, expectations, outcomes. And if your outcome doesn't match your expectations, then there's reevaluation or confirmation. So reevaluate your worldview or confirm your worldview based on that outcome. This is pretty cool. So yeah, discovering divine connections has a lot to do with how we think. And all of our biases that we have, when you watch this, it'll be day 23, only 7 days to go. Keep seeking His face. God bless.